hello to every one of you. We're delighted to welcome everyone who's attending this workshop or this webinar about mindful fundraising in a changing world. As the Akasmi Foundation, we are hosting this workshop, but our friend Sagi will conduct it. And thus, I will just quickly introduce him, say a few words about what to expect, and will then directly hand over to him. Sagi is an international speaker, instructor, and writer on philanthropy and fundraising with over 20 years of experience. As an instructor and trainer, he calls himself the fundraising sensei, which is interesting, and I suppose is related to his love of karate and his expertise in that. And I hope you'll tell us more about that in a few minutes, Sagi. He has trained teams and individuals across the world, and whenever he's not engaging in fundraising or practicing karate, I suppose, he serves as the president of the Harvard Club of Israel. And I personally met Sagi a few months ago in Ras Al Khaimah on his very first trip, I think, to the UAE. And when we met him, we immediately thought that we should find a way to collaborate in several or different means. And we believe that fundraising is a particularly relevant topic these days, especially with the impact of COVID-19 on budgets, on funding, and basically more general on that topic. So we hope that this workshop is of great benefit for everyone who is joining this workshop today. The workshop will be a brief overview of topics that Sagi discusses in his book, that I think he'll share more about that later. And we will hear something about basic topics such as what is fundraising, but also more concrete advice on something like how to make an ask for donations. So we look very much forward to that. And I like to sort of conclude my welcoming remarks by quoting Sagi, actually. He starts the preface of his book with, if you take only one thing from this book, let this be it, you too can fundraise. And I hope that this workshop or webinar will be in that spirit. And without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to you, Sagi, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Marvin. It's a dream come true to see that what we spoke about in Ras Al Khaimah about 6 months ago is actually happening. We were planning to do it face-to-face. Different events have postponed that, but we don't give up. We're going to do it, God's willing, inshallah, in the fall or the winter. And it's very exciting for me. Everybody who's with us on this webinar, you have to understand it's 20-something years of dream coming true to do this collaboration with the United Arab Emirates. I went to Harvard for that. I prepared myself. I studied Arabic. I learned the conflict resolution and everything else in order to create ties and bridges and exchange of ideas and exchange of expertise between our people, between our institutions, between our organizations. So I'm very excited to share what I learned over the years about philanthropy, about fundraising with you guys. And I know some of friends that I already met are here on this call, like Sajida and Reda and Stelius, so I welcome you, and I hope to continue this relationship and meet more of you when I come next time, and when you come, inshallah, to our country also. I want to make sure that it's understood that I'm not trying to teach or to impose any theories or any points of view from Israel, from the United States, from North America. When I came in November to Dubai and Ras Al Khaimah, I came to learn. I said I want to learn the local scene of philanthropy, of resource development, because before I can offer any help, any advice, any counsel, I want to know how things are done. I started to learn. I still have a very long way to consider myself one who knows, but I'm trying to share the insights and the lessons that I believe are timeless, that are not dependent on culture, on legal structure, on language, on geographic location. I believe that the mindful fundraising concept that I'm very pleased to share with you are really timeless, are right everywhere, any language, in any structure. And the first lesson I want to share with you is how I raised money for the first time. What was my first personal fundraising experience when I was just in my 20s. I didn't know what fundraising is, didn't know the term even. And I was a student of Middle East studies, studying Arabic and the geography of the Middle East and more, and just received my black belt in Shotokan karate. And as soon as I got my black belt, I started to teach, because my last name, Malamed, in Arabic is Muallim, it's a teacher. I always like to teach. Whatever I do, I like to teach. It's a nature. So I started teaching people in my own community, in the kibbutz in the northern part of Israel. But then I realized that I can combine two dreams to one. One dream was to teach in Arabic to Muslim Bedouins who were living then in an unrecognized small community, didn't have any after-school activities. And another dream that I just started dreaming was get accepted into Ivy League university in the United States. And those of you who have learned there, I know a few of you are here, they don't care necessarily about your grade. They care about who you are and what you do for the world and your innovation and how you make new things happen. So I brought together a group of Bedouin kids who wanted to study karate. I volunteered my time, but we needed $5,000 to take them by bus to the nearby gym. And I didn't have $5,000. It looked huge that time. Nowadays, I'm fortunate to raise millions of dollars. Then 5,000 seems impossible. And then I heard about a foundation called the Abraham Fund Foundation, based in New York, that does this kind of work, coexistence between Jews and Muslims. So I wrote to them. It's the pre-internet. There was no internet then. I wrote to them. I explained the rationale between martial arts and education and bringing people together and breaking stereotypes and creating relationship. And I got a letter back, said, Mr. Malamed, thank you for your letter. It seems very exciting, but we ran out of our cycle. And Marvin, you know from your work in the foundation, you have cycles. But if you happen to come to New York, come drop by and tell us more about it. Now, those of you who know me know that if they open a little window, I go through. I don't wait for the whole door to be open. So I found a way to get to New York. I went to visit my in-laws who live in Connecticut with my wife. I took a train to New York and came to this lady, John Bronk, in a fancy Manhattan office with the goal to convince her to give me $5,000 to fulfill a dream. Luckily, I did not know the American culture then, because had I known, I wouldn't do what I did. I asked Mrs. Bronk, please stand, don't move, just stand still. I want to give you a physical demonstration of what between coexistence and martial arts. And I explained to her that we build trust, we build confidence, we build, the people know that on one hand I'm strong, on another hand I'm not going to execute my strength in order to hurt somebody, and so forth. And I ended my explanation with a big punch to her face, 1 inch from her face. She was shocked. She said, thank you, we understood your message. Please, we will be in touch. Here is the door. Luckily, she didn't be in security. And I went back to Connecticut, back to Israel. And about 4 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Mr. Malamed, I'm very excited to inform you that we decided to give you $5,000 to make this dream come true. And the program started and then went for a number of years. Many students got a black belt from that Bedouin community. Some of them went to university because of the empowerment process that they went through. I improved my Arabic because I was teaching them in a mix of Hebrew Arabic. They were correcting my Arabic. So I got a lesson out of that. I was both a teacher and a student with 20-something kids. And to make sure you don't think I make it up, here's the photo. That's me behind. You see, I had a little more hair, not that much then. The two people next to me are the teacher and the council head of the community, and these are all the kids. And about 7 years later, I bumped to a young lady who was smiling at me like huge smile. I didn't recognize her. I asked her, do we know each other? She said, yeah, you were my karate teacher, and I got a black belt, and now I'm a certified teacher, and I teach in a school. Guys, there's no bigger satisfaction than the understanding that your efforts, your passion, your endurance has made so good for so many people. So that was my first fundraising. And the lesson here, Marvin, you started and read everybody can fundraise. I think that's the lesson here. There are many others, but the lesson is I didn't know what fundraising is. My English was so-so. I didn't know the culture of the American people even. But I had a passion. I believed in what I was doing. I was committed to fulfill it. I didn't hesitate. I was not afraid. I was not ashamed to pass that passion to others. And that was my first fundraising. Part of what I want to share with you today is what is fundraising? How do you look at fundraising in a healthy, constructive way? Why do people give? And what makes them give to you? So what is mindful fundraising? I urge you, and I happen to teach many heads of NGOs in Israel and outside. And that's my main message. You're not asking for a favor from those that you're asking money from. You're not a beggar that comes with a hand like that asking for charity. You're inviting to fulfill a dream. You're bringing them together to do something good. Remember, many of the people who actually give money are business people, are companies that too busy to make money, to grow their business, to make profit for their shareholders. You do good. If you're an NGO leader, if you're a fundraiser for NGO, if you're for an activist, you happen to help the people in need, the women, to empower women, the children with learning disability, you name it. There's so many good causes. So you're giving them a chance to do something good with the money. You're offering them, you're not only asking them. There's a Jewish saying from our rabbis: the gift benefits the giver more than it benefits the recipient. Namely, the one who gives receives at least as much as the one who receives. And if you're coming to that fundraising endeavor with an approach that you're making friends, you're making partners, you're inviting people to do good with their money, with their sources, you're on an equal level. No one can stop you. You cannot suffer from what many suffer. Embarrassment, afraid. I have so many people who say, well, I don't find time to do fundraising. You know what? It's not about time. It's because you don't want to do it, you keep postponing it. You always find something that you rather do because you're just afraid to do it. Sadaqah. Sadaqah is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Hamsa Arkan al-Islam. Tzedakah in Hebrew, charity, it's very similar. Sadaqah and tzedakah is the same thing. In our prayers, in Yom Kippur, our holiest day, we say charity will save from death. You give money, you help yourself, you help the world. I can't see now the people on the webinar, so I will not ask that question, but I often ask people, do you give sadaqah? Do you give charity? And almost everybody, 95% of people that I ask, everybody gives something, whether it's 10 dirham or $5, or even those without great means always give. So then I ask them, if you give, and if you feel good about giving, and everybody feels good, no one gives because he feels bad about it. If you feel good about it, why do you take away the joy of giving from people when you're not asking them to give? Giving is a joy. Giving is a pleasure. Giving is a privilege. Give people a chance to give. The worst they can say is no, and that's okay. And this is the place to share with you one of my favorite fundraising stories with Alfred Goldstein. About 6 years ago, I was going to Sarasota, Florida. It's a place with a lot of people, older, with a lot of money, who go there to retire and enjoy the beaches. And while going there, I wanted to find out who else is there that I can meet. I did my research and I find the name Goldstein as a major giver in the community. And the name rang the bell. I said, I heard that name before, I don't remember how. I spoke to the CEO of the college where I raised funds for. And he said, Sagi, Goldstein have given 2 buildings 15 years ago, but no one met him. It was through a third party. No one had any contact with him. So I did some intelligence work. I cannot tell you what kind of intelligence work, it's still classified, but it resulted with me having the phone number of Mr. Goldstein. I called him at home. I said, I'm coming to town. I would like to meet with you and thank you for the buildings you've given 15 years ago. That worth altogether was $600,000. He said, come, you can always come. I came with videos and photos of the buildings, of the students, all the good stuff that he has done. And we hit it off, because if there's no chemistry, there's no fundraising. There should be chemistry. And at the end of a lovely hour and a half of a meeting, before I was departing, I said, Goldstein, may I ask you to consider another building at the college, giving another gift? He said, you can always ask. You're welcome to ask. I don't commit anything, but asking is fine. Come in 4 months after I finish touring the Bahamas with my yacht. I don't know about you guys. I have 2 bicycles in front of my house parked. Mr. Goldstein had a huge yacht parked in front of his house. He was living right on the beach in Sarasota. And now I'm fast forwarding the story. I came 4 months later. I asked him for another building. He ended up giving me $500,000 right there, and then started over 3 years, 3 trips every year to Sarasota. One to thank him for what he has done before, one to ask him for a new gift, and the third visit to close the gift, because he'll have to think about it every time. So he would travel the world with his boat. I would come 3 times a year, thanking, asking, and closing. And over that period of time, he gave me over $2 million altogether in few gifts. Then, no one of us will live here forever. We are all immortal. Mr. Goldstein, who was 92 years old by then, got sick, got lung cancer. And he gave a gift while knowing he's already sick. And then over the course of a year, I go to the number 2 meeting asking for a new gift. When he knew he has about a few months to live. He was very sick. I was boarding the plane to Sarasota. My wife said, Sagi, leave the guy alone. He is giving you so much. He's sick now. He's about to die. Leave him alone. Enough is enough. Now, I usually listen to my wife. I encourage all of you to listen. She's more right than wrong. But this time I didn't. I decided, I can ask. The worst he can say is no, but why shouldn't I ask? That's my job. That's why I'm going to this place. I decided to ask. I came. He was already in a wheelchair with tubes in his nose. Every piece of breath was a struggle. It was very painful to see him. We already had a very warm relationship between us. And I knew I don't have a lot of time because the gentleman was very weak. So I prepared a 1 minute, 60 seconds video with my ask. I asked to support the simulation center in our nursing school, a beautiful simulation center. And I said, Mr. Goldstein, I know You don't have energy. I cut it. You love to negotiate. This time I said no negotiation. I already cut it to half what I would ask. $750,000. This is what we do. This is how it will impact a student, how it will impact health studies. He looked at me, said, Sagi, you got it. I hugged him. He was very fragile by then. I hugged him very gently. And the nurse took him back to his bed, and his wife walked me to my car and told me, Sagi, please call me tomorrow before you fly back home. The next day I called, I said, Jim, thank you so much for your support. There's always a spouse in the background. There's never only one person. And then she told me what I want you to take with you. And that's why I told you this whole moving story. She said, Sagi, you will not believe how he felt yesterday after you left. You have brought him back to life. I haven't seen him so happy for months. So happy, like he was when he gave you the gift. And he not only committed the gift, he already asked me, Sagi, how do I transfer it? Because he knew he has limited time. He wanted to make sure that he fulfills it. Nothing falls between the cracks. And that sentence, Sagi, you brought him back to life. I swore to myself, I'm going to repeat that sentence whenever I talk to people about fundraising. Because when you ask for gifts for good cause in the right manner, you're not just helping those who you raise money for, you're also making the giver happy. And imagine a guy who had everything. In terms of money, he had everything. If I was so fortunate to give him few hours of happiness, it justified the whole trip. So remember that. You're not asking for a favor. You're inviting people to give. You're not a beggar. You're a partner. Don't hesitate to ask. I want to pause here for a second. If there are any questions, please write them in chat, and I can address them as we go, because we will have time at the end, but I will also be happy to address questions as we go. So continue. Why do people give? When we go to ask people to give charity, to give tzedakah, whether it's people, individuals, or companies, or foundations, these are the three main, in addition to government, but these are the three main sources of philanthropic fund: individuals, corporations, and foundations. Why do people give? Why do donate money? I want to offer you, these are not all the reasons. For instance, in the United States and Israel, there's a tax reason. In UAE, there's no tax consideration when you give. But in the United States, often there's tax planning around it. So these are not all the reasons, but these are four main reasons why do people give. I call it the 4 C's, the letter C, the 4 C's of why do people give. Care, because people care. Cause, they give to a cause that speaks to them, that they care about. Connection, relationship. And the last one is actually Arabic, but I took it as a C. It's a kef, it's fun, it's a joy, it's kef. We use kef in Hebrew also, the word kef. So care. See guys, I believe after, I'm in my 50s, I met many amazing people around the world. I believe that people want to do good. People want to help others. People's heart is good. Not always manifests that way. And we know there's a lot of bad out there. But people want to help. When I was ready to publish the book, Mindful Fundraising, I was ready early last year. But then came Corona. And the publisher and I decided, you can't publish a book about fundraising and not address this amazing, huge crisis, global crisis, pandemic. So we took a step back, and for 6 months, I interviewed donors, foundation heads, NGO heads around the world, trying to figure out lessons on fundraising during crisis. And the chapter is called Fundraising During Crisis. And one of the insights I learned from a donor, a few of them actually, was that people want to be part of the solution, not just part of the problem, not just see the problem, but be part of the solution. Because remember what happened last year. I mean, UAE and Israel were the first one to come out of the pandemic, thanks God. Some countries are still in the middle of it. But think a year ago, people, no matter how rich they are, they were locked in their homes. They were closed. They couldn't go out. They couldn't visit their grandkids even. And people told me, Sagi, in 10 years, in 20 years, when my granddaughter asked me, Grandpa, what did you do in the pandemic that we learned about in school in 2020? What did you do? People say, I don't want to tell my grandkids that I just kept safe and stayed with grandma in our summer home and for 6 months didn't see anyone. That's a little embarrassing. I wanted to tell my granddaughter that I was part of fighting the pandemic, part of finding solutions, part of helping those who didn't have the means that I enjoyed. So when we look at statistics, at data of giving, I know about Israel, I know about the United States. People gave more. The wealthy gave more in 2020 than they gave in 2019. Because they rose to the occasion. They wanted to help, they cared, they wanted to be part of the solution. So that's one reason why do people give. They care, they want to do good. The second reason is a cause. I mean, there's so many good causes out there. Marvin, you know, you guys are probably considering many causes every day. You can't give to everything. Even if you're Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, you cannot support all the causes out there. So people give to causes that speak to them. For instance, I had a donor from Canada. His son was autistic. So he gave us for program for students with learning disabilities. There are people who have lost dear ones to whether cancer or heart attack or Alzheimer. They care about that. They'll support research on these diseases. I have a donor in Israel who, when he was 16, his father told him, our family are too poor. You have to come out of high school and work and help supporting the family. And it's such a trauma for him. Now he's in his 60s, he's a millionaire. So he gives scholarship for poor students so they don't have to go through what he had to go when he was a teenager. And so forth. There are many causes. So if you touch the cause, if your cause matches the donor's cause, there's a better reason that the donor would like to give you. Then there's the connection. And out of all the causes of which people give, I think that's the most important one. And I base that conclusion on a lot of research and speaking to people. We like to say that there are the three main reasons, the 3 R's of fundraising: relationship, relationship, relationship. People give first to people and then to causes, to institutions. People give because of who asked them more than they give because what that person asked them for. In Israel, we have an amazing example of that. Recent example, there's a huge zoo, like a safari building in southern part of Israel, with a huge gift, in an 8 figures gift by a very big philanthropist who couldn't care less about zoos and animals and safaris. He doesn't care at all about animals. But the mayor of that city asked him to give. He said, that's my first priority. And because the mayor asked him, he gave 8 figures gift to build a zoo, only because of that. And there are many other examples. People give because who asked. And the last but not least, after care, cause, and connection, is kef, is the fun. I enjoy giving. You know, I give very modest tzedakah, but I give more than usual. I think it's fun. It's so much more fun to be in the giving side than the one who needs. It's a joy. I have a donor from the United States who once told me, Sagi, I get so much pleasure from seeing the face of somebody who asks me for money and I say yes. think about it. One can only eat one steak. I mean, I'm a vegetarian, but assuming you guys eat steaks, one can only eat one steak a day or 2 steaks a day. So when you have $1 billion, I mean, how many steaks can you eat? How many cars can you buy? But it's such a joy when you realize it. Not everybody realizes. Sometimes it takes a generation to realize the joy of giving. But when you can help people, when you can help thousands of people, you can help cure diseases, you can help educating a generation. It's a huge joy. It's a huge pleasure. In our military, my kids are doing very meaningful military service. I have 4 children, 3 of them already in the military. There's a rule. If you're in the middle of very hard exercise, when you run out of breath, when you think you cannot run another 100 yards, find somebody weak, who's weaker than you, and help that guy. And when you help him, you'll find new strength to overcome your own difficulties. When I get in a bad mood, you know, we had all kinds of challenges the past 2 years around the world. I think about somebody who I can help, even if it's just a phone call. And when I can make somebody feel better or make their life feel better, I feel better. I get out of this down mood. Giving is fun, giving is kef. And last, it's not a C, but I want to add that because it's an important lesson. As much as people, fundraisers, CEOs of NGOs, as much as they have to ask for charity to support their activities, givers have to give. Foundations have to give. That's what they're for. If there wasn't a recipient, there wouldn't be a foundation. Companies, more and more, it becomes more trendy. Companies know that giving back to the community is good for them for different reasons. I once had lunch with a CEO of a big foundation, and he saw I'm hesitating to ask for money, how to ask. He said, Sagi, let's cut through the bullshit. My job is to give, your job is to ask. Why don't you ask? Let's talk about what we are here for. So again, I'm urging you, if you're working for foundation, for NGOs, if you're board members of NGOs, if you're involved with NGOs as volunteers, as professionals, asking is good, inviting is good in a respectable manner, in a professional manner, looking at the eyes, coming prepared with all your homework, with all your data, with all the statistics, not just asking for money, you have to come prepared. This is what the money is going to do. This is how we're going to measure success. These are the reports that we're going to give you. Again, the El-Qasimi Foundation, I'm sure, demanding what they need. But once you're there, once you're prepared, do not hesitate to ask. And from here, I'm moving to the next topic, is identifying what's your uniqueness, what's your assets. I'm a firm believer and in a way a missionary speaker that fundraising should be based on assets, not on problems and liabilities. And what do I mean? I often work with organizations who always focus on what's bad. I mean, we are far from the city. There's unemployment in our community. Our people are less educated. Our buildings are not maintained well. And every country, every region, every city, every organization can find many problems. And I always tell them, true, you have problems. I mean, who doesn't? But when you go and fundraise, focus on your assets. Focus on what you do best. Focus on what your strengths are. For instance, there can be unemployment, but people are very committed to change their future for the good. You can be in a periphery, but periphery also have benefits. Cheaper housing, more space, stronger communities, and you name it, every place is different. Look at the assets. Look what you do best. Look what differentiates you from others and focus on that. because the important message here that people want to be part of success. Imagine that you have an extra $1 million you want to give for charity, and you want to support or build a building with your grandfather's name on it. That it will be there for generation to honor your grandfather who have maybe inherited you the money. What would you rather support? A rundown building, bad maintenance, broken bathrooms, dirt on the street, people are undressed when you come to visit, or even humble? It doesn't have to be fancy, but you see everything is clean, the garden is taken care of, you see the bathroom has toilet paper in place and nothing is broken, and they wash it twice a day, and the plaques, the signs on the building from other donors are maintained, are respectful. People want to be part of success. Who wants to support an organization who might fall next year, who doesn't know how to respect past givers? So identify your organization's uniqueness and assets and base your fundraising on assets, not on problems. And then the next question is, how do you map your donors? How do you find those who will give you? Then everybody asks me, yes, I want to do fundraising, I need fundraising, but who's going to give me? So I want to offer you a few guidelines or points or action items that helps to map your own donors. First, if you have what we call lay leadership, namely board of trustees or friends of or board of directors, people who are part of the organization, it's volunteers usually. These are people who both will be inclined to give, depends how much they can, of course, and also to bring others, because board members, they have two main jobs as far as fundraising. One is give themselves as much as they can, but also to help get to others who can give. And even if you're not wealthy, often you have connection to others. Second is people with interest in what you do. So for instance, if you're into education, go to people who you know care about education. If you're in environment, go to people and companies or foundations who invest in environment. And nowadays, there's so many databases and there's so much free information out there that you can sit in your office and do a lot of research, or even employ somebody who will do research for you, and you can find and narrow down on those who care about what you do. Then there are companies, talking about corporations. If I'm in Dubai or Ras Al Khaimah or Abu Dhabi or other cities, there's a better chance if I go to a corporation who have presence, hopefully headquarters or major presence where I am, than if I just go to a company or corporation. Think who are, for instance, if there's a little village even that has a company that is based there, that is making money, making income out of the people of that village, that company will be a prime suspect, a prime candidate for supporting your organization because they already invested. And again, around the world, there's a growing trend that companies should give back to the community where they make the profit. That trend has expanded and speeded up in the past 2-3 years. It's now much more than 3 years ago. There's even a movement around it, not just making profit, but also helping the people, helping the community. So when you find the companies who are already in your community, already are helped by the people who are you're helping, there's a much better chance. Then, of course, I said relationship, people who you have connection with. I know people like to collect the Fortune 500 list of wealthy people and say, okay, let me contact them. You know what? It's a waste of time. Because these 500 people have walls around them and are guarded by gatekeepers and are approached by thousands of other NGOs. You have to think about the people who you have an edge with, you have a special connection, you have somebody who can get you in. If it's not you, there could be somebody else from your board, from your friends, sometimes from your family. One of my biggest givers in Israel to a college where I worked before was a board member. He was actually the chairman of our board in a college. And the gentleman who was his assistant when he was a parliament member happened to be the assistant to the CEO of the company. That company ended up giving us $5 million because we got an entrance to their attention. And once we got the attention, we had to do more and build trust and proposals and questions. But the entrance is so important because you want to get in front, direct contact with the person, the individual, the head of the foundation, a major executive in the foundation, the CEO of a company, and get their attention in order to ask for money. Because just because they have a lot of money doesn't help if you don't get that kind of attention. And I want to end again with karate example and that part. In martial arts, when you get your black belt, those who are not intimate with what traditional martial arts think that when you get your black belt, you're done. You got everything you needed. You're good. You're a Superman. People like Reda understand that black belt is only the beginning. Once you get your black belt, then you begin to learn karate. Before that, it's the introduction. You're not in the study hall yet. You're just in the hallway. And the same goes with cultivating your donors. When you get your first gift, again, whether it's a corporation, it's foundation, or individual donor, when you get your first gift, it means your journey begins. That's when cultivating the donor begins. It's not an end, it's a beginning. One of my favorite donors is a gentleman who gave me $3,000, the first gift. After 3 years that we knew each other, that we spoke about it, $3,000. Now he gives me $60,000 because we cultivated. I gained his trust and he visited and he got satisfaction. And I gave him a karate class as part of what I gave him back because he cares about self-defense. So remember, black belt is only the beginning of cultivating donors. And I'm summing that part up with one sentence, is that there are 3 conditions to raise a major gift. I mean, a few $1,000s everybody can give. Not everybody, but many. But if you want the 7 figures and the 8 figures, there has to be 3 conditions met. One is the ability to give such a gift. Most of us don't have that ability. So the guy has to have the wealth. A second is a philanthropic approach. We call it educated to give. There are many, many people who have a lot of money who are not givers. Either they don't care or they don't understand they have enough money. Sometimes it takes a decade for somebody to understand that he's rich and he can give a lot and there's still going to be enough for the grandkids. In our country, there's a very strong high-tech scene. People, sometimes young in their 30s, becomes very wealthy because of exits, high-tech exits. And often they don't start give right away. Sometimes it takes a very long time until they understand they have enough, they can fulfill all their fantasies, but now they can also help others. So education to give, a philanthropic approach is necessary. And the third, which is the biggest challenge for us, is that they want to give to you. Because the fact they have money, the fact they're educated to give doesn't mean they're gonna give to you. There's fierce competition around their money, about their wealth. So ability, philanthropic approach, and the willingness to give to you are the 3 conditions of a major gift. And I want to almost end up, before we start opening it for questions, is talk about the fear of asking for gift. I started with it and concluding with it. So many people, and I happen to work with amazing people, with amazing skills, with rabbis, with retired generals, with presidents of universities, with very accomplished people, they have a hard time asking for money. You'll see the rabbis, they usually have beards, our rabbis. So they go like that, they go on their beard and they start moving around. They can talk about love, they can talk about religion, they can talk about politics, they can talk about everything. But they can't pop up the question, I'm inviting you to give money so we can do X, Y, Z. And I'm trying to help those, and all of you, to overcome that fear, that obstacle, the embarrassment of asking for gift. So I want to share with you an exercise that I developed over the years. Everybody has cell phone, I assume, so you can put your cell phone on a selfie mode. I use a mirror. You see the mirror? I have a little mirror, but phone will do the job. Just put it on selfie. And when you look at the mirror, you look at yourself, see yourself in the mirror, and decide what you see. And decide if you want to see a bigger, unrespected person who's asking for favors, who's less than the people or the person he's asking for, who's embarrassed, who lacks confidence. Or ask yourself, on the other hand, do you want to see an activist, a world changer, one who makes people's life better, one who's proud of what he's asking money for and confident that the money will get to good use, who's inviting the person in front of him to be part of fulfilling a dream? And once you decide on the second option, two things will happen. And I assure you, and please write to me after you do that. One, that there's a much better chance that the person in front of you will be willing to consider to give, because energy is being radiated. It's less important the words you choose, it's more important how you communicate them. And when you communicate your request for a donation with confidence, with determination, with excitement, there's much better chance that it will resonate, that it will be catched by the other person. But the second outcome is as important, because when you do that with confidence, with excitement, you also enjoy the process. You're not afraid to do that more and more, again and again. Because if you suffer from the process, from the actions of asking for money, you will not do that. You will procrastinate. You'll always find something else you have to do and forget it. You never do it. And if you happen to do it because you force yourself, you'll suffer from doing it. So there's a better chance to get the gift, and there's a better chance you'll enjoy the process and do it more. And the more you ask, the more you receive. So please take that mirror and do that, even just for the exercise, even if you don't have to ask for money in your life. I want to end up with another story and a photo. Let me see how we get this photo. Again, I promised you there's going to be martial arts involved. I hope that all of you have seen Karate Kid. It's a great movie. There's a series, but I recommend number 1. After that, it gets not as good. But Karate Kid 1, who has been probably 30 years old, the movie, is a recommended movie for your kids and for yourself. And in that movie, for those of you who don't remember, Mr. Miyagi, Sensei Miyagi, the older guy in the photo, is teaching Daniel's son, the kid, karate. But Daniel's son expected that he comes to the big sensei and from day one he's going to learn fighting techniques and going to be a fighter, because he was bullied by kids in his school and he wanted to fight back. And he was shocked and surprised and frustrated when Mr. Miyagi gave him mundane assignments to wash the car with a very, very slow motion. And then on the other side, wash the car. And then when he finished washing the car, he told him to paint the walls and paint the fence again and again. And he spent days and nights washing cars and painting fences. And only after a few weeks of torturing him, what he thought was torture, he started to learn actually karate, punch, block. But then he was ready. Then his basics were already in place. And the movement, the blocking movement already came natural because he already washed the car. And blocking up came natural because he already painted the fence. And since we are not here to study karate, but fundraising and philanthropy, what is the lesson? The lesson is you have to do things the right way, like my wife says, do things the right way. And when you follow the right way in building your fundraising infrastructure, which is in the book, I didn't elaborate on all of that. When you have the right message and you have all the data and the presentations and the budgets, and you build the giving opportunities, and you build your friends off or board of directors, and you cultivate your donors, and you build a relationship, and you map them, and you start expanding and getting to more and more people, and more and more. When you do it the right way, good results will come. Not always the speed, the timing you were hoping for, but good things will happen. And that's what I do. That's what I do in my consulting hat. I help companies, I help NGOs to build fundraising operation in the right way, in the right state of mind, in a mindful way, namely come from the right reasons, come in an honest, in a professional manner, with empathy. Empathy not just for the donors, but also for yourself, because you have to know also to understand your fears, your butterflies, and overcome them. There's a lot of intimate mental work, spiritual work sometimes around doing that. When you do things the right way, the right things will happen. So I want to end here because we are almost out of time, and leave 2 or 3 minutes for questions if anyone wants. And end where I started. For me to give mindful fundraising philanthropy workshop to people from UAE under the auspices of a respected leading UAE philanthropic foundation is a dream come true. I thank God for that. I thank you, Marvin and Natasha, for giving me the opportunity. And I hope that I will be privileged to play a role in building the bridges, the ties, the relationship between our people, and do good while doing that for many others. Thank you. Al shukran.
Thank you so much, Sagi. I think I can say that on behalf of all the attendees and also the foundation. It's not just individual people, it's always a team effort, as you know. And great insights, very exciting presentation or talk. And I would say we would quickly look into the chat if we have a couple of questions. Otherwise, I surely also have one. Let's just wait a couple of seconds. Maybe in the meantime, if you don't mind, Sagi, you mentioned you have a chapter on fundraising during COVID-19. And you mentioned, I can remember, if I recall correctly, you had your 4 C's. One of them was connection. I think one thing that we experience in multiple Zoom meetings and Microsoft Teams meetings, you name it, virtual meetings, that this connection sometimes can get lost. I mean, a general question would be, has COVID-19 impacted fundraising? But you mentioned sort of if you do it the right way, my assumption is it might not have impacted it too much in your opinion. What do you think about maybe individual aspects, such as connections, such as meeting new people? What is your take on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'll give 2 answers to that. One, I believe in face-to-face relationship, especially with your major donors. Now, if your organization do mass emails and all of that, you can meet everybody. But when you talk about major donors, those who give the most, Zoom can replace for a year, for 2 years, but it doesn't replace it at all. And in a way, now those who will move as fast as possible back to meeting people, to visiting people, will have an edge because there are others who still do the Zoom and the emails. But as important, and I did few seminars along 2020 because people were in shock. What do I do? I said, remember that your donors are people also. They have fears, they have hopes, they have concerns. Be mindful about it. Be empathetic, because when everybody is closed in their homes in a pandemic, no matter how millions you have in the bank, you're also afraid about your health, about your dear ones, about your future. So there was a time I urged people, unless it's urgent, unless you have to ask for money because people are starving if you don't give them food, or hospitals, because there was a lot of need for equipment. Unless it's urgent, don't ask anyone for money in the first few months. Ask them how they are. Ask them about their family. Ask them about their health. Enter a meaningful conversation. Prove that when you talk about partnership, about you're my friend, I care about you, I don't only ask you for money, I don't only see you as a wallet, prove that it's true. This is a test. And I made personal effort to call all my donors around the world and be in touch with some of them more often. Just be there, just as people who care about each other. Now, of course, the time to ask for money came, and I'm proud that my college in 2020, everybody who gave the year before continued to give. Everybody continued. There was one who said I can give less, so he gave half. There was one who gave more, but everybody continued. But I didn't rush to ask them because there were some NGOs who were afraid that if they don't ask now, maybe they won't be alive in 2 months. So they went crazy. It's counterproductive. And I see a question here from Reda. Technology in this, of course, it's a good question, Reda. Space for technology in fundraising. Technology plays a major role. I can name only a few areas. One is the information. I mean, take 20 years ago, if you wanted to find information about foundations, about major givers, you needed to buy books. Now there are databases that you pay not too much money and you have so much information you can spend all your life digging information. So, and it's getting more and more sophisticated. Then what we are doing now, you can have a conversation, you can see each other. It's much better than just a phone call in terms of relationship. The reporting, the ability of one person, even somebody from three people NGOs, to be able to take photos, to take videos, to report in real time about what's happening is amazing. And now the challenge is not to do too much. If you bombard your donors every 3 days with a video, they're going to block you. But to find the right story, the right photo, the right message, and to use it rightly is amazing tool. And there's more, of course, but of course, technology has a lot to offer.